technique that we call, or we just learned in Seattle, called speed foiling. It's probably a familiar technique if you've done hair in your life, but it was a really great reminder on how to get a fast amount of coverage with a minimum amount of foils, especially in a situation where you've got somebody like Bailey here who is pretty, it's a pretty simple case, right? She's pretty light naturally. She's given us a plenty to work with as far as a grow out or roots, if you will. And so it's going to be really easy to get that blended look in here. And it's not going to take us tons of time or tons of foil to work up the head. The difference that we're going to make that we didn't do, maybe like if we were just adding lightness, is we're going to be sticking a low light underneath all of the foils that we end up putting in. So basically what we're going to do is work up the head. You can see we're working up diagonally in the back, and we're just leaving a little bit of space underneath. Yeah, I like that better. We're going to leave a little bit of space underneath so we can pop a low light in right under. One of the things that you can see here is Bailey's hair is already pretty lightened, and she very graciously confessed to us that she loves using her iron on a regular basis. And so we're going to be super mindful to not overlap in this situation. Obviously, you know, there are going to be times where you're going to want or even need to overlap so you can, you know, get some more lightening happening and get some more coverage. But in this particular case, we're going to stay away from that. So now we're just going to flip our foil up, and then right underneath of that same placement, we're going to go ahead and slide a small low light slice in about 3/4 or so of the way down the hair, and then just let it blend off. So really simple, very usable. This is something that we think everybody is going to be able to do. So I'm going to take my low light straight to the hairline, straight to her head, just to kind of complement what she's already got going on. And then I'm literally going to blend that out right at the bottom of the foil, Emma, where the hair hangs off, and then I'm just going to like tuck the ends on the outside and fold it up. Boom. And so that's just going to make sure we don't get a deep end yet. At the same time, it's going to give us the opportunity to get a low light in. So our third, why don't you explain what we're going to do for our third section?
So our third section, we're going to take both of these guys together. Would you look down just a little bit more for me? And we're going to go from the middle section of this foil across horizontally to the middle section of the other foil. We're drawing a straight horizontal line in between the two diagonals. And again, we're taking off just that top little third piece, slicing that. Going in again totally horizontally and placing that highlight.
Super clean. I'll pull that up. Got it? Go for the low light.
Again, creating the shadow underneath. Back it with a low light.
It's just like, man, you got to have that time where you just like disconnect from the scene, just the race, like, and it's a race that I've created in my head, you know, but you have to step away from it.
Or they didn't need the dimension. Let's say they already had that naturally occurring dimension in there, or they already had leftover color, or you're just bringing them up kind of like an introduction to some highlights. We would leave out the like secondary foils that I'm doing around her hairline, and actually we'll turn, let's turn just to take a look at, so around the face here, we started out with 2 back-to-back highlights, just at the new growth, and then we're putting in a low light directly behind it. And that's gonna give her that little money piece. And now we're gonna cover a lot of space and leave a lot of depth in between, and then go for a nice diagonal highlight here. So Emma's gonna do that same exact thing on the other side. But this is gonna cover a lot of height. Diagonal foils cover height and width at the same time, to where horizontal only covers width, vertical only covers vertical and height. So this is going to cover a lot of space and give us a lot of coverage.
Kind of turn it forwards so it's
Yep.
not moving in.
Now it's just like, man, you got to have that time where you just like disconnect from the scene, just the race, like, and it's a race that I've created in my head, you know. But you have to step away from it.
section, I'm going through with the horizontals again. And the top of her head is on the narrower side, so I'm not having any gaps at the edges. But if there were gaps, I would leave whatever the width of my section is out to again ensure depth at the side, but also to make sure my section isn't getting wider than I can control. But the idea is to mirror these sections with the horizontal slices that we did down here. And her head is fairly uniform through her parietal, so it's not getting wider like a lot of ours do. I know mine does. So this is the same size as that section previous, the previous horizontal. And just like the previous horizontal sections, because we do want that extra brightness on top, we're doing 2 of these highlights back to back.
Now it's just like, man, you got to have that time where you just like disconnect from the scene, just the race, like, and it's a race that I've created in my head, you know, but you have to step away from it.
All right, so now that we've finished putting in the full head of highs and lows, just to sort of recap what went on in here, it's essentially the same pattern going in from different angles. Coming in the underneath, we started with diagonals on both sides, leaving out just a tiny, tiny sliver so that they don't meet. Doing the high, in this case backed by the Lowlight because we wanted dimension. After that, we went in between those with our horizontals. So the diagonal, diagonal, horizontal, moving that up the entire back of the head. Going into the sides, we started with a slice along the hairline, backed it with a baby light weave right behind it, and then back into our pattern, pivoting towards a horizontal as we moved up. And then we came into the top of her head. All that was left was to do the hairline foils, and then we recreated that same patterning of the 2 diagonals, the horizontals, diagonals, the horizontals, and there was a little bit left in her crown section. So we just went through with some horizontals moving up that mirrored the last horizontal section. So keeping that same width as the last horizontal, not trying to take it all the way across, but just mirroring that same size section to finish up and close that gap.